Hello weirdos and welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited that you're here. Today I'm going to be doing a July wrap-up and I will be going over the books that I read this month. How many did I read? I read 8 books this month and I'm really excited to talk about them. I'm gonna try and go in chronological order, but with the way it uploads to my computer, we'll see how that goes. So the first book we're going to talk about, the first book I read this month is Scandalous Women, The Lives and Loves of History's Most Notorious Women by Elizabeth Cary Mahon. Now, I have so many feelings about this book. Oh my god, I made a whole video about it, a whole book review. It's 26 minutes long, it's crazy. I did not like this book. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. It was just so frustrating for me to read. I really like history, right? This is no surprise. We all understand this. This book just drove me crazy because I personally did not connect with the writing style. In my opinion, it was a little bit too informal. It was really unnuanced, which was irritating. These women's lives are very interesting. There's so many interesting women in here that deserve better. Another big issue with this book is that it was so whitewashed. The majority of the women in this book are white. I kept a list of the ladies that were not white, and as you can see, it's like 8 of 36 women. That's being really generous, and I just trying to read this book all the way through was really difficult because the writing style was so boring. It was ridiculous. I don't want to go into too much about it. I have a whole review. I did like some things about it. There were some lines that I thought were funny. That was very few and far between. Some of the openings were good. Large part, it just was not good. I don't recommend it to anyone who really likes history or wants to know more about like women in particular. I think there's so many other books out there that do a much better job than this book, and I would let you go towards them than this one, which is so sad. This book was originally a blog and the author turned it into a book, and it reads very much like a blog. I want to mention how I read this book. I read this book with my eyeballs. I didn't have any audiobook. Maybe that factored into the exhaustion I felt while reading it. Maybe just because it was so boring. I didn't enjoy it, I didn't like it, and then at the same time I just spent all of this energy to try and read it, and it was just ugh. So that might have also colored my experience. That's not always the case when I have to read books with my eyeballs. It just happens sometimes when I don't enjoy it. So just thought you guys should know. The second book I read this month was The Limits of Multiculturalism: Interrogating the Origins of American Anthropology by Scott Michelson. I loved this book. It was amazing. Coming right after Scandalous Women, where I was like, oh my god, I was so frustrated. This book, I really liked it. I loved it. I thought it was just a really, really good dissection of early anthropologists, how freaking racist they are, and all of their views towards Native Americans, and how they would twist things around to make it all work in their favor, and how they always had ulterior motives for doing the research they did rather than like for the actual study of anthropology and to document these people. I really liked it. That being said, here's the big but. It's extremely academic. It is not meant for the layman at all. Really, to understand this book and to have a really fun time enjoying it, you need to understand who all of these anthropologists are, what their views are, and be somewhat familiar with their work. I was not very familiar with all of the anthropologists in this book. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. In my opinion, it would have gotten that 5 stars if it was written in a more down-to-earth way, but it wasn't. That's okay because that's what it was going for. I wish that it was written for the general public because I think the stuff discussed in this is a very good discussion, and I think that it shouldn't be open to just anthropologists, that anyone and everyone in the world should be able to engage with the conversation and the topics talked about in this book. But no, it's just my opinion, I really liked it. I really liked its points that it makes about cultural exchanges. Another weird thing with this book is that pages are missing. Look, it's 134, then it skips literally to 147. And there's no break. It's not like that the pages were ripped out. I don't know what happened. I think it was just a printer error. I don't think it's any of the fault of the author. It was sad. And I was like, no. I read it and I was just like, wait, what? There's a chapter. What? There's a chapter missing. This was like a nice high. I read this with my eyeballs because there's no audiobook for this, so that was really fun. No, it wasn't. I don't like to read academic things with my eyeballs. That's not pleasant for me. I prefer audiobooks. The next book I read was Standing for Socks. I know, you guys all know the situation. How the frick did I get this book? You guys have seen all of the books, or you will see all of the books, but this is not in any of my hauls. So how did I get this book? Well, it was my birthday and my mom sent me a whole care package. In the care package, she sent this book because I like socks, and she's very much the kind of person where if she sees something that I like or any of my siblings likes, she's just like, oh, I'm gonna grab it. And that's why I have this book, and I decided to read it on my birthday because she sent it to me. She sent a little note in it too, so that was really sweet. So I decided to read it on that day because I didn't really have much to do at work that day. This is a middle grade book. It follows this girl named Farah. She wears mismatched socks accidentally one day to school. That slowly becomes her identity. What I mean by that is that people start associating her with her socks and none of her other personality traits. Unsurprisingly, makes her very frustrated. And she's entering middle school, so she's going through this whole transition in her life, and she feels like she isn't being taken seriously because all people can think about when they see her or when they talk about her, and all they do is talk about her socks. There's a really cool scene in the book where she has a birthday party. Every single one of her gifts is sock related. Her uncle even gives her a tie with socks on it, and she's just like, I'm a girl. Which to that I say, bitch, you can wear a tie. That's not the point of the book. We're not gonna get into that issues. It's a whole separate issue. I thought this was a little cute book. Obviously, it's well below my reading level. The themes of like identity and finding your own identity and self-worth is very applicable for someone young going through a big change in their life. It's kind of like talking about similar themes about finding yourself, being true to who you are while not sacrificing things that are important to you. There's a really sweet message. It's like tries to be a plot twist in this, and you're like, yeah, we know. I don't want to put a rating on it. I think that if you're in middle school, read it. It shouldn't take you that long. I read this with my eyeballs. I didn't have any audiobook help with me. Big trend recently. But yeah, I thought it was like just a cute little fun romp. At the beginning of every chapter, there's like a drawing of a pair of socks, which is cute. It's cute. What else can I say? It's not bad. It's not amazing. It's cute. It's fun. It's fine. I'm not gonna rate this because I'm not the correct demographic. Next book I'm going to talk about is The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, illustrated by Christina Gurman. 2 N's, so you know she's German. She actually is German. This isn't the actual book. This is a graphic novel of The Jungle. I saw this and I was like, ooh, it's The Jungle, but a graphic novel. I am intrigued. Disclaimer, I really like The Jungle. I think it sets a very powerful message, and it was so important to getting things changed in America to make the meatpacking industry more sanitary, and to give rights to workers in a time where capitalism literally squished the little guy. It's just a very, very dark time in American history. And what I like about this book is that the red is the only color that's emphasized. The use of color and the lack of color is really, really good in this book. I think that the illustrator did a really, really good job with this book. I was thinking to myself, how are they going to depict this one scene where this one character dies? It's very graphic. In the book, it's just kind of said, this happened to this person amongst a big info dump. And I was like, how is she going to do this? And I got to the end of the book and I was like, in the last chapter, I was like, wait, shouldn't that character be dead? What happened was the illustrator completely cut it out. It wasn't the only character death that was cut out. And I found that to be increasingly disappointing. This main character is just pummeled over and over and over. It's like they can never get a break. And that's the point, because that's what it was like. The adapter sanitized the story a lot. There's a lot of things that don't happen. Like the main character becomes a drunk because of all of the shit that's happening. But in the story, it says that because he's so nasty and he's so smelly, the bars won't even let him go in. And he's like, well, this is keeping me from becoming a drunk. And he never becomes a drunk in the story. Stuff like that is cut out. And to be fair, the book The Jungle is very, very long. I think she did a really good job like cutting down for some of the stuff, but there's some key important moments that don't happen that in my opinion are very important to add to the oppressiveness of the book. To my recollection, the book doesn't really end on a happy note. I think it ends and he's like got a job, but what he's been through has changed him as a person, and you know he's never gonna be the same. In this adaptation of The Jungle, it ends way too happily. Why did that make me feel somewhat hopeful? This shouldn't make me feel hopeful. And I really like her illustrations, and I do want to read more of what the author has done. I like how she can get the points across in adapting the work. I just don't like how sanitized it is. I told my friends this. I would buy the entirety of The Jungle. If this was volume 1 of 5, I would buy all 5 of those volumes. I couldn't find anywhere like if this book was specifically written for children or not. I wish the ending of this was more gut-wrenching, and I think that she could have kept it as truncated as she did if she had just kept some of the details in and didn't change as much as she did. There's just a really depressing thing that happens to this one character where she dies, and it's very sad and it affects the main character a lot. And if she'd kept that death in and continued in her abbreviated story, I think it would have worked better. I'm not an adapter, it's just my opinion. Please keep that in mind. The Jungle is really, really iconic, right, for its meatpacking scenes and how freaking disgusting and the descriptions are. I wanted to see that shit in here, and I didn't. You see a little bit of it, like they go on some factory tours. You don't get how disgusting it is, and I think that this missed the mark of the point of the book. That being said, I still really enjoyed it. If Goodreads had like a half-point system, I'd probably give this like a 3.5 because I did really like it, but it just was missing some of those key things to make me like give it the 5-star. For Goodreads, I'm gonna keep it at a 4 because I'm gonna be generous. I did really like it. I did really enjoy it. And Jungle, maybe it's just colored because I really like the story of The Jungle. I don't know. It was The Gene, An Intimate History by Siddhartha Mukherjee. I don't know how to pronounce that. I tried. I really tried. We all know I can't decode things. This book, oh my god, I loved it. I really did. I thought it was really good. It tells basically the history of genes and the study of genetics. And it's something I didn't know that much about. Not that I didn't know anything about it. What I knew mostly was about how basic genes work and about Mendel, and I knew about Darwin and all of that basic stuff. The things I learned in this book, I was so angry for so much of it. I would just be sitting there fuming on like a train or sitting there with my friends in a museum and be like, what the fuck? How did this just happen? I was so angry. And it's not because of the writing. It's because of what he was writing about. It was so engaging to read. I think that's really a testament of his writing abilities, that he's able to draw out all of these emotions. He tries to kind of like look at all sides of the issue, goes through like the history of genes and like how as we developed our knowledge about what genes are, how they do, what can happen. And he tells like the darker sides of what is happening too, about how our understanding has led to bad things like eugenics. I hate eugenics. It's one of the worst things ever. I get really frustrated when I read about eugenics because I get really angry, and it's something that I'm really, really passionate about. I knew about eugenics. I'm not an idiot. I knew that it was popular. I didn't know how far it went though, and that really, really freaked me out. I didn't know that we went to the point of castrating people, and I really liked it. I really liked this book. I thought it was funny when he was talking about how people used to think reproduction worked. It was very funny. I want to talk about Rosalind Franklin first, how we discovered the structure of DNA. I thought the way he talked about it was really, really interesting. I liked the contextualization of it, because kind of what I had been told before then was that Watson and Crick just stole her stuff, which to some extent you could argue that they did. I really liked that he explored the dynamic between the three of them and really took the time to contextualize and add more understanding and more layers to it. This is the first book I read this month with an audiobook. Read it, it's so good, worth it. The next book I read is Cleopatra, A Life by Stacy Schiff. I really like this too. I read this post-reading Scandalous Women. Cleopatra was my favorite chapter. I listened to it on audiobook and I followed along. I really like how the author doesn't just tell you her idea of what happened. She takes time to say, this is what historians say, and tells you each story. She's like, so if we go from historian A's point of view, this is how this interaction went down. If we go through historian B's point of view, this is how it went down. And I really liked that. You really tell the research that went into this and all of the sources that she looked at. And I loved how she contextualized anything. She was like, take this with a grain of salt, because remember who was writing the history books. I thought that was so good. She was like, this portrayal of her was largely due to Roman historians really tried to color her story and slander her name because they didn't like her. She wasn't popular. And another thing, it took the time to really introduce you to what Egypt was like at the time. It talked about economics, about how that interacted with the Nile, about how Cleopatra were to ingratiate herself with her people, the things that she did, and it was just really interesting to get that point of view. And it's not normally a point of view you get when you are reading a book on Cleopatra. I really liked that it took the time to introduce to you what Egypt was like during her rule and how it changed over time based on and how loved she was by her people. I loved that it was so self-aware, that it was so like we don't exactly know what happened. I don't have much else to say about it other than I liked it. I think for me, what gave it a 4-star instead of a 5-star, it didn't hook me as emotionally as some other books have. Read it, pick it up, educate yourself. The next book I read, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. It tells the story of humans in terms of like broad strokes. It doesn't really focus on the specific events. It talks more about the underbelly of the events, if that makes any sense. Like talking about how economics, how religion, what gave rise to these things, which I really liked. And as an anthropologist, this felt really, really anthropology to me, even though he's a history professor. He really knows what he's talking about. It kind of lost me more towards the end, but maybe that's just a personal preference thing of mine. He talks more modern things that are happening. I didn't find it as engaging, and I don't think that's his writing. I think it's just the subject material. I wasn't super engaged. Like the first half of the book, I was just like, yes, I love this. But I think that's because it was talking more about our human ancestors and how we as humans were able to outlive them, more about the foundations of more complex societies. And it really makes you think about why we value certain things that we do value. He talks about like why we other people and the origins of that and how it was necessary for survival. I don't know if I want to read his next book because it talks about where humans will go, and I just don't really think that's as important to me. I think he really breaks down barriers and really talks about how humans are humans and the foundations of our society in a way that is so easy to understand and that is really digestible and understandable for people who may not have understood it before. 4 stars, 4 out of 5 stars. Really good. Pick it up, read it. The audiobook is really cool too. I read it with audio and following along. So good. The very last book that I read this month is Artemis by Andy Weir, and full disclaimer, I didn't really read this in July. I read this in August, but we're gonna count it because this isn't my book and I'm not gonna have it for my August wrap up, so I wanted to talk about it while I still have it. I liked it. I think Andy Weir has found his niche. Sci-fi novels for like the near distant future. I've read The Martian. I really liked the world in the moon colony Artemis. I think Andy Weir does a really good job at world buildings to make his world believable. I really like his sense of humor, and I really like all of the science that he crams into his books. This was not as science heavy, which kind of disappointed me. I wanted there to be more science in there. Science did serve centrally into the plot, but not as much as I wanted it to. I enjoyed this. One of the things I loved is that it's so diverse. All of the characters are kind of from all over, and I thought that that was really cool, and that makes sense because it's a moon colony. I think this book gets a lot of flack on the internet, and I don't think it deserves it. I thought it was fun. I think people were like hating it, and I was just like, why? I don't want there to be a sequel. I think he should write standalone books. There's a part that I think was supposed to be a plot twist, but it wasn't because it was super obvious in my opinion. Basically, this one character finds out information and there's only a limited number of people who have access to that information. But it turns out to be one of those people with access to the information. I was like, yep, they have access to the information. Why are you so shocked? This book I did read with my eyeballs because my library at home has a terrible audiobook collection, as we all know, and they didn't have this, and so I requested it. Another thing with this that I was kind of confused by was the whole like heist thing. I didn't really understand that. Maybe it's just because I did read this with my eyeballs. Maybe I missed some important information. There's like a group of people that we don't want going on to this moon colony. I just don't understand why what the main character is doing is gonna keep people from coming to the moon colony. For me, this book was 3-star. I still enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this, but for me what brought it down to 3-star was the heist thing. I wanted there to be more science. I still would recommend it. I think he does a really good job of world building. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Like, subscribe. I don't know what to do. Tell me what you thought. Is there anything, would you like me to reread The Martian? This has taken so much time to film. Next week I plan to do the DC haul video, the second part. Yay! This is my last week in this hotel. Hopefully next week's video is the last video that you will see in this location. Thanks for sticking around, and I will see you later. Bye-bye!